Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. Rajori Poonch, कश्मीर और पाकिस्तान का क्या एफर्ट है, उस जगह के अंदर क्या होने वाला है, इसके बारे में थोड़ी सी हमको ज़्यादा बात करनी पड़ेगी क्योंकि जो इंसिडेंट्स हो रहे हैं और जो लॉसेस हो रहे हैं हमको, दे आर क्वाइट कंसर्निंग. कल हमने बहुत लोगों से पर्सपेक्टिव लिया, मैंने भी अपना पर्सपेक्टिव दिया था एक नैरेटिव वॉर के ऊपर कि किस तरह से आर्मी को डिस्क्रेडिट करने की काफ़ी चीज़ें करी जा रही हैं उस जगह के अंदर. आज हम बात करेंगे मिस्टर राजा मुनीब से, जो वहाँ पर लिखते हैं. ही इज़ अ जर्नलिस्ट इन दैट रीजन, a man with a finger on the pulse on the ground. So let's try and find out कि यार ये गेम क्या है, what is happening, what are the Pakistanis trying to do, उधर पे local reaction क्या है, and generally speaking on the ground ये concept क्या है जो पाकिस्तान का नया एक war fighting type concept है. Let's try and understand that. Namaskar and welcome to the show जी.
Namaskar Aadi, thank you. It's a pleasure being with you.
सबसे पहले आई एम गोइंग टू पिन हिज प्रोफाइल फॉर ट्विटर इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन, सो दोज ऑफ यू हु वांट टू फॉलो हिम प्लीज डू दैट. आपको उनके आर्टिकल्स और ये सब वहाँ पर हैं, सम वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टफ दैट इज रिटन, एंड आपको थोड़ी सी इंसाइट मिलेगी क्योंकि हमको देखिए मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंटली ये चीज़ सॉल्व करने के लिए कॉन्वर्सेशंस रखनी पड़ेंगी आगे, क्योंकि ऑल सॉर्ट्स ऑफ ओपिनियंस नीड टू कम इन टू मेक अ ग्रैंड मास्टर नैरेटिव ताकि ये चीज़ को हम एड्रेस कर सकें. जो चीज़ें पिछले 2-3 दिन में हुई हैं, दे बीन वेरी कंसर्निंग. तो आपका जरा लेट मी जस्ट टेक योर ओपिनियन, व्हाट डू यू थिंक हैज हैपेंड इन द पास्ट 2-3 डेज, व्हाट इज द ओपिनियन ऑन द ग्राउंड, क्या लोग बोल रहे हैं, एंड आपके हिसाब में पाकिस्तान का गेम क्या है?
See, what has happened in last 3 days is something which has been happening for last 2 years in this belt, right? After abrogation of Article 370, अगर आप देखेंगे कि जिस तरीके से our government went ahead and they cracked down on terror in Kashmir Valley and took out all the uh, you know structures of organized terrorism. So what options did Pakistan was left with? The Pakistanis were not left with many options vis-a-vis Kashmir. Why? Because the life of a terrorist became very, very small. In some cases, it was a matter of days. He would have joined 2 days ago and he would have been eliminated. और obviously ground पे support भी नहीं था ना, locals का support था. Organized terror उनके जो जितने भी networks थे, they had been taken down. Men were behind bars. They were cracked down by NIA, SIA, Jammu Kashmir Police. So pressure बहुत था. And the Pakistanis had no other option but to revive this LOC Poonch area, which was very, relatively quiet from 2003 to 2021. अगर आप इस एरिया को आप देखोगे, जब से इंसर्जेंसी स्टार्ट हुई है फ्रॉम 90s till 2002, this was a hotbed because it was a very preferred route of terrorists from across the borders coming in and then going towards Doda, going towards Shupian, going towards Kokarnag and south of the belt, and then moving forward towards Uri side. It was very easy for them to do that. But after 2003, especially when we launched that Operation Sarvanash, adjoining the hill Kaka Hill, uske baad se there was a plug. And obviously, you had your ceasefire violations bhi bahut hoti thi. So it was not very easy for the Pakistanis to move from the launch pads and just come across the border. But 2019 के बाद अगर आप देखोगे, we had Galwan also. So we, because of Galwan, we had to, redeploy our forces vis-a-vis the LAC in Ladakh. तो वैली में से कई RR units थी जिनको मूव किया गया, especially so the whole security grid moved around. While the local police, the Jammu Kashmir police, strengthened its hold within the valley, within the within the cities and the valley. It's the border areas which became a bit of porous. And if you look at the infiltration data, there was infiltration happening, reported in 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23. Initially, numbers I think zero, but around 2021, Army itself said that we have about 70 odd foreign terrorists which are active in North Kashmir. Right, majority of them were eliminated in different parts of Kashmir, but there are few who have still survived. But अगर आप इनकी मूवमेंट देखोगे, इट हैज बीन बिटवीन रजौरी पुंछ एंड शुपियन, कुलगाम शुपियन अभी हालान में हुआ था. इस ईयर में वी हैड अ ऑपरेशन देयर, वी लॉस्ट 3 soldiers in those forests as well. So the Pakistanis don't have an option. They don't have a very active support group on the ground which will sustain or which will harbor these guys. But अगर आप टोपोग्राफी देखते हो, vis-a-vis कुपवारा का ले लो, LOC का, या उड़ी का ले लो, Poonch, yes, the topography, the jungles are very thick. You have crevices, natural habitats, high, caves. You have river crossings, At the same time, the weather is something which plays to the advantage of the terrorist vis-a-vis on the other side of the border, which is like Odi और कुपवारा जहाँ 8 फुट 10 फुट 12 फुट मच्छल में बर्फ पड़ जाती है, LOC के आसपास बहुत बर्फ होती है, so survival is not easy. But in this area, the survival is easy despite the hard terrain. They are able to cross over and they're able to survive in all weathers, whether it is summers or winters. So Pakistanis have now this thing that, and they want to keep it, they want to bleed the forces as much as they can. So they have picked up their battle very, very, cautiously, I would say. They are concentrated on one area, they are concentrating on one kind of attacks. And, it is successful. For now, it has been successful. This year, we have lost about 20 plus soldiers. I remember when it started in 2021 October, in that operation alone, we lost 14 of our soldiers, right? But I think what the biggest challenge is that the groups which are operating this hit and run, this ambush kind of, technique they are using, once we launch the counter, offensive to them or counter search to them, we don't have much success. Because if you look at the number of terrorists which have been killed in the area, it's far lesser than the soldiers we have lost. So our losses are great, but the terrorist casualties are less. So they are able to sustain that kind of a module, right? And then there are apprehensions. What they do is they come across the border and then they stay for 2-3 days. They know their geography very well. Obviously, they would have mapped it well, and then they run back to their hideouts, or even in some cases they go back as well. Because if I remember the army attack in April, jo Bhadurian mein hua tha, you had those videos then coming out. So obviously the guys had crossed over, and then the videos had come out from PAFF, which essentially is a Jaish-e-Mohammad, proxy. So Jaish का module जो है वो हमेशा से ऐसा ही रहा है. They are the ones who have the hardest of the trains, because अगर आप देखोगे, Jaish also shifted its training camps from Pakistan to Afghanistan after the takeover of Taliban. Masood Azhar went and met the Taliban leadership. He met Akhundzada, he met Sirajuddin Haqqani, and they discussed their operations being shifted from Pakistan to Afghanistan. They have known about 7 training camps in Afghanistan as of now. So they're training their men there. And, this is where the mountain warfare, the jungle warfare comes in, because Afghanistan is arduous. We know how tough the terrain in Afghanistan is. So, they're specializing. They're basically specializing to fight a specialized battle. They're preparing themselves to fight these kind of warfare, this tough kind of warfare, which we call, on this side, which was not there, which we have not seen for a very long time. These in Kashmir, these Lashkar guys would come in and they would hold up somewhere, and, we would have gun battles for 2 days or 3 days, right? Or we saw they would take huge casualties in Poonch, Rajori themselves in 2001, 2002 May. There was huge number of casualties, about 60, 70 to 2021 mein tha, if my figure is right. And then Hilka had another 47 was claimed, that was the most conservative number which was given. So it has always been the case, and they have just, copied the textbook and they have come back to this area.
Because one of the things that मेरे को जो दिखता है, जो मेरे को है कि they've changed their tactics, and हम लोग offline एक बारी बात कर रहे थे, थोड़ा सा इन लोगों ने change करा है, which is actually hitting targets which are more sensitive. थोड़ी आवाज ज़्यादा निकलती है वहाँ से बाहर. उसके बाद videos, there's that they've learned a little bit of propaganda, जो पहले नहीं था. जैश-ए-मोहम्मद, हिजबुल और ये लोग जब अटैक्स करते थे, ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता था. अभी they are kind of change their tactics. ये क्या दिखता है आपको? What is this all about? And इनके जो press conferences आने शुरू हो गए, press releases आने शुरू हो गए. This is a very new game that is being played there in terms of the narrative. How do you see this?
It's a part of my information warfare basically. ये जो press release देते हैं, ये इनका आता है कि हमारा. But आप ये देखो कि at certain point of time, it's almost real time. They tweet or they put it in their Telegram channel. जब जो ही कुछ action हो रहा होता है, even start भी हो रहा होता है. I remember a couple of instances, just before something was supposed to happen, they would tweet कि होने वाला. So that synergy between them on their information channel and on their ground was very, very strong. So the Pakistani information warfare has always been very, very strong. There is no second thoughts about it. In fact, जो पाकिस्तान का टेररिज्म कैंपेन है, अगर आप कश्मीर का 30 years का देखोगे, it has been solidly backed by information warfare, misinformation, disinformation, building up narratives, breaking up counter narratives. They have been hugely involved in this game from since before 1990, I would say. Even if you go back to Operation Gibraltar, and before that, how they built that narrative. Even then, even in 47, how they tried to build a narrative, right? So information warfare is a part of their terrorism strategy. They have an embedded information warfare system placed into that module, and that is exactly what they're trying to do now. Now, देखो इसके दो fold चीजें हैं. एक, what is happening is, if you see the valley, if you see the hinterland, relatively calm, relatively safe. People are earning, people are, moving away from the violence. But at the same time, it is hurting us, it is hitting us where it is hurting us the most. It is directly attacking the soldiers. It is making those videos. It is putting that psychological dent into the Indian army, trying to build up a perception into the valley, into the minds of people that they're very potent, they're very lethal kind of a force to reckon with. And they're doing something what the Taliban was known to do to the Americans in Afghanistan. So they're trying to build a larger narrative around it. We are a very well professional kind of a terrorism force which operates and which is very ghatak, if I would use that word. तो एक वो information warfare है इसमें. दूसरा ये है आदि इसमें कि ये जो इनका ये रिकॉर्ड करने का मॉड्यूल है, ये 2014 के बाद से आया था. If you remember, there were some civilian killings which happened, including that of a girl in South Kashmir. And when they shot her, they recorded her on the mobile, right? And then it was circulated about. So that was basically to create fear in the minds of other people, especially, ones who were trying to get into mainstream or moving away from, questioning their Islamist way of living. They wanted to create that fear. So I think it's the same thing. They want to break the morale of the forces. They want to create that kind of a fear and uncertainty among the people living in and around that area as well. Now, उस area में एक और problem है. It is not only Pakistan's module of Lashkar or of Jaish-e-Mohammad. How did this all start and how did they started doing this? अगर आप ये देखोगे कि जो narco terrorism है, जिसको narco terrorism बोलते हैं, there has been a huge push of narcotics from across the border in Jammu and Kashmir. Whether it is in Uri, whether it is in Rajori, whether it is in Poonch. So they started building their module from the drugs, right? Building the couriers for drugs, because that's the easiest money you can pay somebody. Somebody makes very quick money. It's a very, very quick money making machine, right? And once you get into that track of moving drugs, then the next step is you move the weapon with the drug.
Yep. Well, you have to protect your lines, correct?
You have to protect your lines. Then next move is, अच्छा ठीक है, तुम drug भी ले गया, तुम पैसे भी ले गए, अब ये मेरे 4 बंदे भी ले जाओ. इनका भी रास्ता दिखाओ. And then, the man who is into that trade is trapped. Either he has to, either he will be eliminated, he knows he'll die, or he has to follow it very quietly. So that is the module they follow, because if you remember, there was an infiltration attempt in Uri, where I think 2 of them were killed and we found the bodies. They were not carrying any weapons, they were only carrying drugs on themselves. And they were Pakistani, POJK based people. They were not even locals. So the idea was to get in the drugs, come in without the weapons. The weapons are already here. They have been drone dropped or they have been moved by a, human courier. And then you pick up the weapons, you do your action, you might dump the weapon back and then you walk across, or, you just go and hide yourselves. So the module and the tactics of the terrorism has also changed, right? Their whole approach towards the game has already changed. What in hinterland we used to call hybrid terrorism, कि यार ये सुबह killing करेगा, शाम को घर चला जाएगा. But that has not been very, very successful. That model has not picked up. People rejected it. यहाँ पे the youngsters didn't fall for it. Thank God they didn't fall for it. It would have been a mayhem. But that is essentially what they are doing. So you never know. It's not necessary that they are carrying the weapons all the time, or they might be without weapons, sitting somewhere, take it out from the dump, do their action, put it back, and then essentially then walk free. That could also be the case.
That's a very deep. Sorry, मैं थोड़ा सोच में पड़ गया था क्योंकि that's a very deep thought, because one of the things that you actually see इज इन लोगों ने सेंसिटिव टारगेट्स उठाने शुरू करे थे, क्योंकि काफी माइग्रेंट लेबर जो लेबर आई थी, माइग्रेंट पॉपुलेशन वहां पर वैली में आई, वैली क्या काफी उस रीजन के अंदर आई, उनको टारगेट करना शुरू किया, स्पेशली हिंदू, स्पेशली गाइज हु आर फ्रॉम द हिंदी बेल्ट, एज सो कॉल्ड। एक वो नैरेटिव चला था ना, हिंदी बेल्ट को हम आने नहीं देंगे वहां पर एंड ऑल दैट। सो दैट्स अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग थिंग दैट यू एक्चुअली ब्रॉट अबाउट। आपको ऑन द ग्राउंड क्या आवाज दिख रही है? व्हाट इज द वॉइस ऑफ द पीपल? ऑफ कोर्स देयर इज अ ट्रैजिक इंसिडेंट व्हिच हैज आल्सो हैपेंड, there is no hiding from it. Galti hai whatever it is, and people have to pay the price for it. That's how life works. I mean, when there are operations there are mistakes, and when there are mistakes there are punishments. That is fine. But how do you see the reaction of the people? क्योंकि मेरे को एक डर था कि कहीं प्रोटेस्ट, कहीं पे धरने वरने ना शुरू हो जाएं, और जो अच्छा दिखा मेरे को, पीपल हैव एक्सप्रेस देयर एंगर, छोटा सा प्रोटेस्ट हुआ which is valid, there is no question about it, बट कहीं ना कहीं लोग भी समझदार हैं,
नहीं, अगर
शांति
उस
है।
बेल्ट की आप बात करोगे ना आदि, वहां पर आपने कभी उस टाइप के प्रोटेस्ट, यू विल नेवर सी दोस काइंड ऑफ प्रोटेस्ट हैपनिंग इन पुंछ शुपियन। आपने सॉरी पुंछ रजौरी में आपने कभी नहीं सुना होगा पुंछ रजौरी में स्टोन बिल्डिंग होती है, वहां
जी
कभी नहीं होती थी। देयर वर प्रोटेस्ट एंड प्रोटेस्ट होते हैं, पीपल वुड कम आउट, एंड इस बार भी प्रोटेस्ट हुआ। बट credit to the administration, they are far more active in engaging them and then finding out the fault and correcting the fault. In valley we would let it linger on ना कि पता नहीं हुआ नहीं हुआ था नहीं था, पत्थर वाला था या नहीं था, नहीं पता हमको, राइट। 2010 प्रोटेस्ट का अगर आप बैकड्रॉप देखोगे वो तो फैल पे स्टार्ट हुआ था। Same was the case कि he was walking home, that is what is being said, that he was walking home and he got hit and people got angry, but uska backdrop much fake encounter tha. So the pattern of people behavior is very different on that side of the Pir Panjal and on this side of the Pir Panjal. तो वो जो पैटर्न है वो भी फिट नहीं करता, बट देन डोंट टेक दैट साइलेंस जो उनका है ना, और
don't take it for
what we
granted.
call is that unviolent, unviolent way of protesting. Please don't take that for granted because it gets imbibed. There is another very big elephant in the room which nobody is talking about, and I think very few people have rightly pointed out. When they talk about overground workers and why this has shifted and why the sympathy might have shifted and people are helping. Yes, narco terrorism is one of the causes. The couriers are a cause. The other one is what happened in Kathua. The Kathua rape, if you remember, of that Gurjar girl, right? Now, till the case was settled, everything was fine. But then what the kind of polarization some of the Jammu leaders tried to do on that was something which again started it, right?
Yeah.
So this is a community which is very, very, which might not be very rich, but it's very proud in terms of its origin. The Gujars and the Bakarwals are considered to be extremely a proud kind of people. The tribe, they drive it from their pride. They have a pride attached to themselves, and if you target or hit that pride somewhere, that is the problem. Second thing is, I think the outreach from last 4-5 years directly with the Gujar community, I think that is missing somewhere in Kashmir. We have not seen much of an outreach happening in that area. I know Army runs a lot of programs at Bhavna and all that, but I think kahin pe we have lost that touch. That touch has been lost. राइट तो वो जो टच लूज हुआ है उसकी वजह से भी कहीं ना कहीं, और देन ऑब्वियसली द पॉलिटिकल नैरेटिव कीप्स हार्पिंग ऑन, दैट इज द प्रॉब्लम. नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस व्हेन दिस हैपेंस, आई एम सॉरी, आई जस्ट व्हाट हैपेंस, होता क्या है. अब आप ये देखो कि पुंछ और रजौरी में radicalization is something which is going on for a very long time. It's a sorry, देखो, there is a constant way of radicalizing people. It's an all India phenomena happening. We have seen Maharashtra, radicalized people being radicalized. We have seen all this. The Tablighi Jamaat, which roams around Jammu and Kashmir, their influence in Rajori Poonch has increased. They have been visiting this belt a lot. So, furtherance of जिसको हम mind बोलते हैं ना, they have been able to do that. So that divide also plays a role. So इसमें काफी factors हैं जो play in करते हैं. It's not only that one module or another module or money is the only consideration. There are a lot of factors into which are plugged into each other. So multi-factor issues होते हैं जो इनको solve करने पड़ेंगे. So I think going forward, the biggest lesson would be कि we will have to re-engage the community somehow. We've been successfully doing that from 2001. Before that also. And Hilkaka was especially launched because if you remember, there were two int groups called Special Group 2 and Special Group 3. It was Special Group 3 which was under SOG of Jammu and Kashmir Police, जिसका main int gathering का काम होता था, and primarily this was basically gurjars and bakarwals of the area who would give you the coordinates and would tell you the movements. And that Special Group 3 was pivotal in in the thought behind launching Operation Sarvanash. Because उनके इंट पे ही वो हुआ था कि they gave you कि कहाँ पे क्या है कितना है, and you were able to say कि क्या number है क्या number नहीं है. So actively involving them is very very, when we talk about even Operation Sarvanash, and I was previously explaining कि Special Group 2 and Special Group 3 जो int groups थे उस time पे जम्मू एंड कश्मीर पुलिस SOG के अंडर थे, and they were pivotal in that, and most of those groups had information coming from the locals and Gujars. They were a part and parcel of that int grid. So obviously, जो int grid हमारा है something that has weakened somewhere. We have lost touch with them. Either I don't know what if it is a trust issue or what the issue is. I really don't know. But I think that strengthening of that relation is very very important. The army has a pivotal role to play in that. Once again, they will have to relook at the strategy of approaching the people again and talking to them, because Gujars and Bakarwals have been a very intrinsic part of our CI grid. And not only on this side of lightning control, everywhere on LOC. Even Kupwara and adjoining areas, they have been a very pivotal part of that, because they know the terrain, right? They know each and every part of the mountain, the pass, everything. They venture out onto these areas for, feeding their cattle and all that. So इनकी जो नजर है, इनका जो they know a lot of stuff which is happening in the area which we might not be knowing it. And information from that end is very very crucial. So I think that it needs to be revisited as well. That part needs to be revisited by the security grid.
I think आप जो बोल रहे हो बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग चीज बोल रहे हो, because I guess there's been a little bit of an over concentration in trying to ensure कि वैली कहीं ना कहीं थोड़ी ठंडी हो जाए, उसके बाद भी हम बाकी एरियाज में देखेंगे. अभी I think it's time that the valley is calmed down. People have very positively responded जो efforts हुए हैं वहाँ पर. I think it's time that एक जो overall focus हो वो होगा. As far as responses are concerned, हमको दिखता है कि the army is conducting a massive operation. As a matter of fact, General साहब गए वहाँ पर, मनोज पांडे जी गए वहाँ पर, army chief. Army chief does not go normally for these kind of local area operations, but the sheer factor कि army chief खुद गए. One is that incident which has happened. दूसरा इंसिडेंट के हिसाब से इंसिडेंट कैन बी हैंडल बाय द कोर कमांडो, उसमें आर्मी का कोई चीफ का कोई काम नहीं है. बट कहीं ना कहीं ये दिखता है कि देयर इज गोना बी अ वेरी बिग ऑपरेशन व्हिच विल हैपन इन दिस एरिया. जैसे पहले भी एक दो बारी हुए थे, आई थिंक 2003-4 में कभी हुए थे.
2003
जब
the last one was 2003 sir.
Yeah, so I guess there is something like that in plan right now.
There could be. See, Adi, the thing is, next year is going to be very very hot in Pakistan, right? Especially in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and the blowback is going to come to Kashmir. So we have to be mentally prepared, right? There are no emotions attached to this thing. जितना वहां पर बढ़ेगा उतना वो कोशिश करेंगे कि उसका ब्लो बैक जो है वो दिस साइड ऑफ द बॉर्डर भी वो उसको प्रेशर रिलीज करने के लिए दे विल पुट दैट ब्लो बैक, राइट? सो दिस बेल्ट इज गोइंग टू बी हॉट. एंड अगर आप देखोगे traditionally, in terms of terrorism, in terms of insurgency, winters used to be quiet. But now the winters are getting hot. Yep. Last time we had Dangri, right? Then we had something else. We had operations happening all around the range in winters as well. So this winter is going to be no different. If we, there could be another one happening 1 month or 2 months down the lane. I hope that we don't take casualties, and we have learned lessons from the last one. But I think, now the army chief has also talked about strengthening. They're sending one more brigade up there to strengthen the grid. They already sent one this year. Another one is going to be put in place. There are going to be 2 more brigades, additional brigades, to take care of the loopholes or the gaps which we have. They will try to fill in the gaps. But blowback will come from Pakistan next year as well, because it's going to be very very hot for them. They will have a lot of problems. Uska blowback to आएगा ही आएगा. I think एक और इसमें एक और चीज आदि जो हमारा सीजफायर वायलेशन नहीं हो रहा है. Like we have the ceasefire in place. It plays strategically to their advantage. as well,
Yeah.
because when that shelling used to happen, it was not very easy for these boys to move through the forest. They could even take 20 days to move in through a forest and come in. They're not in a hurry. But when you have a constant violation happening, then it makes their life difficult as well. But I do see some kind of an operation which will be launched by the Indian Army. I don't see it happening in the winters because of the logistical and other challenges which come with the winters. But I do see that something will happen coming March or April. There will be
Hmm.
some kind of a operation to flush out or to loop the put the gaps into the loops where there are. Kuch na kuch to hoga. There has to be, because this cannot continue. This trend cannot continue, and you
Yeah,
cannot
you can't.
continue to do because you can't. So you have to launch a counter, because effectively this I would call is the last bastion, right? और अगर आप इधर काउंटर शुरू करते हो समर में, they will try to come from the other sides as well. They tried this year also. ओडी में उन्होंने ट्राई किया, कुपवारा में ट्राई किया. The grid is very very strong in summers. The game is very different. They get caught out and they get killed on the LOC. So the LOC is going to be very very hot, regardless it is Poonch, Rajori, Uri, Kupwara, Machil, Tangdar, Karen sector. All these sectors are going to see some kind of infiltration bids coming from Pakistan next year. They're going to double their efforts. And if we hear the news from Pakistan, they've been preparing for that. They've been putting in the numbers. They're trying to do that. So yeah, I would say yes, it's coming next year.
Because it's of course our elections are quite a sensitive, बड़ा sensitive सा माहौल है उसमें, और काफी चीजें होती हैं. कहीं ना कहीं एक चीज और है. आप हम लोग ऑफलाइन बात कर रहे थे, आपने बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग सी एक चीज बोली थी कि ये वापस गुड तालिबान बैड तालिबान वाला गेम खेल रहे हैं. एंड व्हाट इज दैट ऑल अबाउट? क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं मेरे को देखिए, पाकिस्तानियों के पास चॉइसेस जो है ना, डे बाय डे रिड्यूस हो रहे हैं. एंड आई एम वेरी क्लियर ऑन द फैक्ट कि केपी तो गया इनके हाथ में से. आई डोंट थिंक दैट द पाकिस्तानी आर्मी इन फोर्स कैन एक्चुअली गो इनसाइड दैट प्लेस एंड डू एनीथिंग. वापस नहीं आएंगे अगर कोई
No,
घुसेगा भी तो. केपी इज गॉन. या
उस
सो
एरिया में ट्रेडिशनली दे नेवर गॉन इनटू दैट एरिया. वो कभी हुआ नहीं है.
हाँ, 2009 में
नेवर.
या पहली बार ही घुसे हैं लोग अंदर.
हाँ, तो
तो
नहीं, वो इन्होंने एक्चुअली वहां जो ब्रिटिशर्स ने किया भी था, दे हैड 47 में था वहां पर. द ब्रिटिश हैड देयर ओन फोर्स देयर. द फर्स्ट ऑपरेशन पाकिस्तानीज लॉन्च्ड वाज ऑपरेशन कर्जन. And the operation was about removing all those forces and getting them into the hinterland so they could protect Pakistan, and give the autonomy to the region. And that region has always been like that. And we have seen with Afghan war how that became, right? So, why somebody's calling me. So that essentially is the case. They might not be able to go in there. 2001 के बाद भी हमने देखा था कि उधर हुआ क्या था. So it's not going to happen. It's not that easy. It won't happen that. So next year, good Taliban, bad Taliban, जब मैंने कहा था, what I meant was that if you look at the ISKP or the module of ISKP, right, the Pakistanis are involved into that module. Regardless of what they cry about or the Talibanis cry about, the Pakistanis are into that module. And the Pakistanis have been aiding and abetting the ISIS leaders and the ISKP leaders. If you see some of the ISKP men, they were hardcore Lashkar people who were into Lashkar-e-Toiba or Al-Qaeda at one point of time. And for their own strategic depth to undermine the Taliban, they created this. So that is another problem they have, right? Now, the problem with ISKP is one is the Pakistani module, one is the Afghani module. The Pakistani module is something which wants to undermine the Afghans, just like you had the Taliban, the good Taliban and the bad Taliban here. And then you have the Afghan ISKP, module which was set up by Musab al-Zarqawi himself. एक वो मॉड्यूल है जिसने स्टार्ट किया था हेरत से. Right? He is the one who started, when he came to Osama bin Laden to meet Osama bin Laden, and he and Laden never got off well. But what happened was that, Zarqawi was the one who told them that he will be of useful, and then Laden gave him $5,000 and said, okay, you can set up one module of Al-Qaeda in train your own army. And he ended up starting from Herat. And when the Americans invaded, he had a 3,000 strong force. But he is the man who is the father of ISIS, right? So he's the one who started it. So one, you have that module sitting in Herat. The other one is sitting in Nangahar, which is very compromised, which is aided and abetted by the Pakistanis. Now, Pakistanis will try to play this game of good Herat, good Taliban and bad Taliban, good ISKP and bad ISKP against the Afghans, right? And that is going to hit them. Because eventually what will happen is, I don't see this time the good Taliban, the good ISKP winning, because Afghans are very, very, very of it. The Taliban, especially जो अगर आप देखोगे जो rift है पाकिस्तान का और अफगानिस्तान का, Durand line is an issue, but largely the issue was जैसे ये बोल रहे हैं ना कि आप TTP को control करो. They were like, you stop aiding these ISIS guys in our territory because you have been giving, feeding them off. And you have created this module here. You also start, putting your brakes onto them. The Pakistanis never did that. And then the TTP backlash came. So the Afghans said, we can play the game better with you. So that is what happened there. So Pakistanis will try to do the same thing with TTP. They will try to use ISKP. But then you have the good and the bad ISKP. And the bad ISKP is a bad news for Pakistan. Because that bad ISKP is staunchly against Pakistan. Because they don't believe in the Pakistani establishment.
Yeah, they are like TTP.
No, TTP is separate. This ISKP is separate. This is the one which is targeting the Jamaat-e-Islami in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They have Fazlur Rahman on their crosshairs, and that's an ISKP module.
उसने तो वो भी करा ना, एक चिट्ठी डाली है ISKP मॉड्यूल ने, ये बिजनौर वाला जो मॉड्यूल है, आई थिंक खार में होता है ना,
खार में जो है, खौर जिसको बोलते हैं,
खौर बाजाजोर का जो मॉड्यूल है, उसने कभी वो वार्निंग भी करी है इसको JUI वालों को, फजलुर रहमान को, कि भाई साहब आप जरा थोड़ा ठंडे हो जाओ, नहीं तो हम और जरा इलेक्शन से दूर ही रहना.
नहीं, जो JUIF की किलिंग्स हुई है वो उन्होंने ही तो क्लेम की है. अगर आप देखोगे जो JUIF का जो ब्लास्ट हुआ था, the one in their rally which happened, that was carried out by them, where they lost a lot of men. That mosque attack which happened was also carried out by them, right? Then they came out with posters just now saying that stay away from this JUI thing, and from the election and JUI rallies and all that, stay away from that. So the warnings are there. They have Fazlur Rahman on their crosshairs. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to eliminate him before elections.
बट वो तो एकदम फिर आर्मी का बंदा है ना.
हाँ, तो वही है ना, आर्मी मुल्ला नेक्सस अगर आपको पाकिस्तान में तोड़ना है तो आप किसके पीछे जाओगे, आप किस मुल्ला को उड़ाओगे? He is the first one, the prime target.
तो अभी now see the deal is I am also doing a little research on this subject, and one thing that I am realizing कि ये जो ISKP का इनका प्लान है, as it is अभी यूरोप में भी 2-3 जगहों पर ISKP के झंडे वंडे आगे थे. जर्मनी में एक जगह पे अटैक हुआ है, ठीक है, नहीं जर्मनी, नेदरलैंड में अटैक हुआ है, छोटा सा हुआ, ज्यादा बड़ा नहीं हुआ, बट दे ब्रॉट आउट द ISKP नेम, एंड दैट वाज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग टू मी कि इन लोगों ने एक वेस्टर्न कंट्री के अंदर जाके ये नाम उठाया है. अब ये कौन सा फैक्शन है, क्या है, वो पता नहीं है, व्हाट वाज देयर पर्पस, बट इससे एक चीज जो हुई है कि ISKP की जो एक मदद, या जो नॉट मदद, आई वुड से रिकग्निशन है, वो दुनिया में वापस से फैल गई कि ओए यहाँ पर भी कुछ हो रहा है. नाउ मेरे को आपसे जो पूछना है कि ये पाकिस्तानियों ने जान के करा है कि ताकि थोड़ा सा पाकिस्तानियों को पैसे मिले, क्योंकि जब ये गया था मुनीर उधर पे, the only thing that connects together, देखो यार ISKP इधर बैठा है यार, ये देखो उधर पे जाके ब्लास्ट कर रहा है, इधर पे ये देखो मेरे JUI वाले को धमकी वमकी दे रहा है, without telling them that there is another faction जिनको ये खुद कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं. एंड ये देखो, दिस इज व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. इन्होंने नेदरलैंड में करा, पैसे दो मैं लड़ूंगा इनके साथ.
टिपिकल पाकिस्तानी गेम प्लान, टिपिकल पाकिस्तानी टेक्स्ट बुक, game. That is what that is what every journal in Pakistan has done. We will fight the monsters we have created, we'll keep them feeding so they don't bite you. So absolutely you're right, you're bang on to that, because Asif Munir ka agar aap dekhoge, what the US, bada interesting sa kuch aaya USA. I was reading one or two publications में था कि Asim Munir ka ye tha ki Americans said that we don't know much about him, so it was a chance for us to profile the man, right? But आप एक चीज देखो बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग हुआ, आसिम मुनीर की पहली बेंड देखो कहां पर आई है, where he has bended in front of Americans, and that is getting Imran Khan the bail in the most strongest of the cases, which is Cypher.
Yeah.
Just 2 days after, right? So obviously, the man is not what he perceives to be. The man is not what he portrays himself as, an Iron Man. He just went and he bended, and because obviously that would have been on the table to try Imran for negotiations with TTP, because Imran has been somebody who has been trying to mainstream them. There is
Yeah, leader है,
absolutely
leader है.
no doubt saying that Imran का और जो उसकी regime थी और जो उसके officers थे, they were actively involved with TTP, trying to negotiate with them. They do have goodwill and they do have negotiating power with them. So that was one thing. Second thing is, he would have taken approval to take out some people. Like अब हो सकता है कि इसने बोला हो कि यार देखते हैं, let me try to get Sirajuddin Haqqani. He's wanted by you. He's of no use to me. Quetta Shura मेरा fail हो गया. ISKP की सर पे मैं डाल दूंगा. Let them see what they want to do. वो अंदर ही लड़ते रहेंगे. We'll create a module inside Afghanistan. ये वहाँ focus करते. Could be a chance, right? You cannot rule that thing out. So obviously, क्योंकि अगर ये आर्मी लेकर कन्वेंशनल वे में जाते हैं, तो then they are doomed. They don't have the resources. Their economy is low. They cannot fight it. The Americans couldn't fight it. They would never be able to fight it. They might use all the artillery they want to use, but जो blowback फिर Pakistan's mainland में आएगा, वो that the Pakistanis would not have seen in the last 20 years. It will be a major blowback, right? So Pakistanis is at loss. They don't know what to do with the tribal belt. They don't know what to do with Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They have essentially lost that territory out. It's a Bangladesh moment for them. So Pakistanis are in deep trouble next. That is why, and they are trying to election now. कोशिश ये कर रहे हैं कि election now. Despite political things happening, now Nawaz will be having jitters कि यार मैं आया मैं क्यों आया हूँ वापस, इमरान को बोल देगी. Now he will be not very confident. There's nothing which has come out of PMNL, but he will be very jittery. कि चल क्या रहा है, इलेक्शंस होने या नहीं होने. Maybe
इमरान अगर जेल से बाहर निकलता है, अगर वो निकलता है, then there is a problem, because पता नहीं है मेरे को कहीं ना कहीं, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I have this very strong fear that ये तालिब्स are going to take Imran and say आजा बेटा तू ना पश्तूनों के वहां पर ना वो जो एरिया है वहां प्राइम मिनिस्टर बन जा.
See, if you read Taliban, that is not essentially incorrect. If you understand Taliban and if you see, Taliban essentially is a pan-Islamic force. It doesn't believe in nation states, right? But the Taliban thought on clarity is very, very clear. Taliban के पास options था to get into Central Asia and expand its influence. Turkmenistan and all those areas, right? But the Talibanis are very, very clear. They say unless and until we don't have firm control of Pakistan, we will not expand. Their first target is Pakistan. Taliban is not something which believes in nation states. They don't believe in Afghanistan. They believe beyond borders. And the first border they want to cross is Pakistan. They want to secure Pakistan, and then they want to move Central Asia. That's what their game plan. So they wouldn't mind Imran Khan being their proxy. Why would they mind? इमरान को तो वैसे भी तालिबान खान बोलते ही.
हाँ तो आजा यार, English speaking, you'll give us legitimacy. I mean,
so that is
I used to say this as a joke, but आज जैसे situation develop हो रही है, you can actually see that happening. So Taliban Khan will actually become Taliban king.
Absolutely. In coming 10 years, you don't know. In coming 5 years, you don't know what will happen in Pakistan. Pakistan is on a very, very bad way.
Interesting. आपको ये चीज, no, Pakistan is a very bad wicket. My last question to you is how do people in Kashmir and जो एक sect था, एक population थी जो pro Pakistan थी, आजकल वो क्या बोलते हैं इन चीजों के बारे में? When they see this chaos happening over there, do they turn their backs or they still say यार चलो गधे हैं लेकिन हमारे गधे हैं?
See, it will make me very unpopular saying this, but there is one thing which is very synonym to Kashmiris, that is called ambivalence. They're very ambivalent in their character, in their nuance. So at one point they look at Pakistan and say it's an open, it's a dead mulk, and then when something like Rajouri happens, they are very quiet about it, and they very keenly observe ki hoga kya, ki will this research, will this help, ये कहाँ जाएगा, क्या होगा, क्या नहीं होगा. But largely, I think Adi, what we have been able to do is we have been able to make a distinguish. The younger generation has completely moved. They are very happy with the change which has happened in the valley, and I'm talking about 10 years and above. I'm not talking about 18 years and above.
Absolutely.
With 10 years and above, जो children है ना, जो kids हैं, इनका जो bent of mind है different है. They are looking at things very differently. And that gives me a lot of hope vis-a-vis Kashmir and long-term peace plans in Kashmir. So that is something. But overall, the response is very muted. The Kashmiris will not give you a response. They'll be very muted about it. And then they will be looking at Taliban as well. So वो है एक factor कश्मीर.
अभी तो 2-3 साल ही हुए हैं. It's pretty fair to kind of.
Yeah, it's a long way to go. It's
but I must say, from a point of time, कि जब कश्मीर बंद हो जाता था एक इंसिडेंट के ऊपर, I think the quiet is a massive improvement in the situation.
It is because people, once you have, absolutely, because there is no incentivizing of the conflict left anymore.
Yeah.
What was happening in Kashmir was incentivizing of the conflict economy. Once you break the back of that economy, there is no reason for somebody to, follow that path. Now the economical shift has happened to the other side. The stakes are much more higher in peace than in violence. So the people would also want to stick with the side of the peace rather than the violence. They know violence is not going to give them any dividend, any bonus now. So that's a paradigm shift which has happened in Kashmir.
That's a very interesting take. क्योंकि कहीं ना कहीं one can understand. You've been under that you've been facing the barrel of the gun for the past 40 years. Suddenly कोई आपको बोलता नहीं वो बंदूक चली गई है. But you can, when you look far, you can still see a small glitter of that gun. You will say चल ठीक है जा रही है, but I'm not putting my money into it जब तक वो चली नहीं जाती पूरी तरह से. And I guess the Supreme Court
word कभी नहीं जाती, गन कभी भी नहीं जाती पूरी तरीके से. Once this terrorism comes in, once weapon comes in from the society, it never goes away. But उस गन का इफेक्ट कितना जाता है वो इम्पोर्टेंट होता है, राइट? सो आज आप कश्मीर में देखो, आज उसका इम्पोर्टेंस खत्म हो चुका है. देयर वाज अ टाइम व्हेन वी यूज्ड टू से कि यार इतनी रेडिकलाइजेशन है कि अगर आप 4 ट्रक साउथ कश्मीर में अभी वेपन्स के डाल दोगे, अभी सारे उठा लें. बट आज अगर आप डाल दोगे तो मुझे नहीं लगता सारे उठाएंगे. दे विल बी वेरी स्केप्टिकल, नहीं यार क्या करना, क्यों उठा. So yes, this thing will continue, but ऊंट किस तरह करवट बदलता है वो भी इम्पोर्टेंट होता है, राइट? एंड इसमें करवट जो है वो दूसरी तरफ पलटी है, तो ऑब्वियसली अब आपको भी इसी तरह बेंड करना पड़ेगा. सो एम्बिग्विटी जो थी कश्मीरी माइंड में, एक तो एम्बिग्विटी थी ना वो आर्टिकल 370 को लेके, वो इंडिया और पाकिस्तान को लेकर कि नहीं जी स्टेक होल्डर है. This government has completely, decimated that narrative completely. They have decimated that. They have shown that Pakistan doesn't hold a single stake in this place, and they don't matter whether we are handling them diplomatically or whatever way we have handled them. We have completely decimated, and that has left a psyche and an imprint on the mind saying that they don't matter. पहले तो होता था कि यहाँ पे कुछ भी होना है तो जब तक पाकिस्तान से अप्रूवल नहीं आएगा तब तक कुछ नहीं होगा. इलेक्शन में भी पाकिस्तान का अप्रूवल चाहिए, राइट?
जी.
Not anymore. They have been decimated. Separatist politics was a big part of your society, everyday society. That politics have been, uprooted completely. And that politics is not coming back for sure. That kind of politics, that kind of thing is not coming back in Kashmir. So if that doesn't take, root again, I don't think they have anything to stand their legs on. It is going to go more towards normalcy than abnormalcy. Except what we are seeing in Rajori Poonch tactical movement by Pakistan, because Pakistan is not going to sit quiet.
Yeah, obviously, because Pakistan क्यों चुप रहेगा? I mean,
वो वेंटिलेटर पे रह के भी हमारा ये होता है कि दे आर वेरी बिजी एंड दे आर वेरी डिस्टर्ब्ड इन देयर एरिया, तो हमारे साथ कुछ नहीं करेंगे. वो वेंटिलेटर पे भी होंगे तभी वो कुछ ना कुछ खुराफात करते हैं.
absolutely correct. And अगर मैं सही में बोलूं, if I was Pakistan, I would do the same thing. कि यार 40 साल से मैंने वहां पर इन्वेस्टमेंट करी है, वहां पर मैंने पूरा अपना नेटवर्क बनाया है, यहाँ पर तुम सडनली तोड़ देते हो, ओ भाई मेरा तो पूरा एग्जिस्टेंस खत्म हो जाएगा. नहीं तो हाउ डू आई से दैट पाकिस्तानी, या
पाकिस्तानी एस्टैब्लिशमेंट का तो एग्जिस्टेंस ही कश्मीर और इंडिया पे है, तो अगर वो कश्मीर पे होल्ड खत्म हो गया तो वो बचेंगे कहाँ?
थैंक यू. So they have to keep this fire burning,
Yeah.
And
there are many ways of keeping this fire burning. Let me tell you. Kashmir is not the only place where the fire burns. They must be looking at some other area in India where they want to light another fire. And that is where this ISIS module is coming in India. Ab dekho, ISIS collapsed in 2014, 2015. But 10 years later, it is surfacing in India. We have 40 modules which were caught in India, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's a different discussion. That's altogether a different discussion.
नहीं, absolutely. I think आपने एक teaser छोड़ा है audience के लिए. Thank you so much, firstly, for your time. To all the viewers that are going to see the show. ये जो last की इन्होंने एक line बोली है, इसके ऊपर we will do another show altogether. Because the threat of ISIS, जो मैंने एक छोटे से show में पहले भी cover किया था, I think अरिंदम के साथ we did the show. We didn't dwell into the depth of it. आज राजा जी के साथ we will deal into the depth of it probably in the next week. In the new year, we will discuss this particular threat to Bharat. But in the interim, sir, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic discussion. But the insight has been brilliant, I must say. I am so happy that I've connected with you, and I'm I hope that this relationship is a long-lasting one where your insights are good for all of us to learn, and of course all the audience which are not sitting in Kashmir to get a sneak peek into what is happening in that region. So thank you so much, sir, once again, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Aadi. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.